Hello and welcome to the video. My name is Dr. Stephanie Stecker and I'm a licensed psychologist in Colorado. And I'm owner and clinical director of Mountain Vista Psychology. And we work with tons of adults as well as kids and teens who struggle with anxiety. And so I just wanted to take a few minutes and share a little bit about parenting kids and teens with anxiety. So, one of the things I wanted to really validate for the parents is anxiety is not just difficult for the person who experiences it. If you have a child or teen with more extreme anxiety, you are likely exhausted too. We see this a lot. First, you need to be sure you're getting plenty of self care in for yourself because dealing with a child or teen with anxiety is depleting. And if you're not good at taking care of yourself, you will struggle more to show up for your kid in a helpful way. Um, what anxiety does is when someone is feeling anxious, it's like they're feeling out of control. And so they want to figure out ways that they can have control in their life to try to help their anxiety feel better, which is what part of why it ends up being hard on not just them but other members of the family, because they're often more rigid with things, and we'll talk about that a bit more in a little bit. But I often get the question like, why is my child anxious? And honestly, there's a huge genetic component. Also, environment plays a role, right? It's like so many of the other things with us humans. It's both nature and nurture. There's some research that's been able to locate genes largely responsible for anxiety, trauma, chronic stress that also can change the way our physiology works. So it can be a both and situation. One thing I really want to take out of it is I often hear parents have a lot of blame and shame, and please release that if that's something that you're experiencing. Okay, I want to talk for a few minutes about what anxiety shows up as, because honestly, through the years, I have worked with so many people who um, aren't sure if what is presenting is anxiety or it's misunderstood to be something else like defiance or just being shy or whatever. So I wanted to take a few minutes and talk about that. So anxiety often presents as avoidance. Um, Socially, at school, extracurricular activities like avoiding school, avoiding extracurricular activities, avoiding things socially, or being really shy. Um, and the shyness really can be feeling anxious. So there's not a lot of talking. Younger kids may also cling to their parents. This can be a sign of anxiety. And they may have trouble going to sleep at night. And again, they can get really rigid around things, like they have to have things a certain way. Um, Otherwise, they melt down. So older kids may be more withdrawn. They also can end up using substances to self-medicate. So a little bit more work. At school, they may avoid doing schoolwork for fear it won't be good enough. You know, if you have a kiddo who's perfectionistic, um, often the flip side of I need it perfect is if it's not perfect, I'm not good enough. There's often that flip narrative that they have. And that's an anxious narrative. At school, they may avoid going to school because they experience a spike in anxiety when they get there. And other situations, such as groups of people or travel, can also be challenging. So, when thinking about this, often people with anxiety are more emotionally reactive. They can get angry and upset, I've talked about rigid in thinking, controlling, and refusing to engage in things that seem reasonable. And this is where some of that rub happens, right? Like, why are they getting so upset? Sometimes as a parent, you may not realize your child has anxiety until some of these things are showing up. So when younger, kids can have trouble sleeping. When older, they can too. When younger, it can show up that they don't want to sleep in their own bed. They have meltdowns around bedtime and refusals and procrastination around their nighttime routine. And sometimes they'll talk about their worries or fears. Sometimes they won't. But if you have a kid who's experiencing some of these other behaviors, there's a good chance it's anxiety. When older, there's often an avoidance of bed, screens. They're tired. They may not be sleeping well. So maybe they go to sleep and they wake up and their brain is in that monkey brain, amped up space. So they're not sleeping well. So they're more tired through the day. And the most frequent symptom, I would say, is frequent talk of worries. If your kid's talking about their worries, then you probably know they're anxious. If they aren't, and they have a bunch of these other behaviors, they still may be anxious. They just may not know how to talk about their worries. Kids and teens will often talk about things they're worried about, such as not doing well enough in school, not being liked, not being good at their sport. So the biggest mistake I see most parents make is that they support their kids by helping them avoid the things that make them anxious. And this makes sense, right? As parents, we want to be nurturing and loving and support our kids' emotions, which is extremely important. The problem comes that the more, as humans, the more we avoid things that make us anxious, the more our anxiety grows. So it's just how our nervous systems work. When we, I'll give an example. I always give the example of my daughter with spiders. So when she was really little, we're talking before she was 2, we went on a hike and she was saying, "The spider scare me." So spiders scare me, right? And wanted us to pick her up. And it was so hard because she wasn't old enough to logic yet. But we stayed, went down on the ground with her so that she wouldn't feel abandoned, but supported, but also wouldn't let her escape it. Because escaping things that we're anxious about increases our fear. So if you are nervous about doing something and you don't do it, your nervous system says, "Oh, good job for keeping me safe." And the anxiety increases. So I'm not saying do the total tough love, you have to do this thing with your kids, especially when they're little. You want to come alongside them and connect with them and support them. And if it's something that is not, we'll talk about how to rate this a little bit, but you're going to want to make sure that they have that support and not have them continue to avoid the things that make them anxious, because their anxiety will just get bigger and bigger. All right. Let me flip the slides. So there's a trick to this. Some things are just too big to conquer yet. So when I think of anxiety, I think of a 0 to 10 scale. If people are at a 6 or lower with something that makes them anxious, they're most likely able to tackle that particular fear or anxiety. When something is 7 or higher, it is too big for now to conquer. So if your child is having a total complete meltdown about something, that thing may be too anxiety provoking for them to sit with yet. So when doing therapy, this is cognitive behavioral therapy stuff, but when doing therapy, one of the things that can help is to figure out what things cause the least amount of anxiety with still causing anxiety, and to conquer those first so that the kids can feel success with it. When you have a kid who's a worrier, they often want to talk about their worries, but if they focus too much on their worries, they will get bigger and bigger. So, one of my favorite kid books about helping with anxiety is has it talks about tomato plants, and I wish I could think of the name of it right now. It's such a great book. Um, but talks about anxiety like tomato plants. And the more when you plant tomato seeds, if you pour water on them a whole bunch, they're going to grow into these big, beautiful tomato plants. And the same is true with our anxiety. When we focus too much on worries, they get bigger and bigger. So what do you do as a parent? You want to identify and validate their feelings, but do not sit with them. So, you don't want to have your kids spend an hour talking about their worries, right? You want to identify what their worries are, validate their feeling and experience, and then you want to work with teaching them how to let them go. Challenge anxious thinking by adjusting the thoughts. The more what we focus on grows, and you can help them refocus on something that does not cause anxiety. All right, I'm going to say it again because it's important. If you have a kid who's anxious, it's important their emotions are supported and not dwelled on. It is also important to validate their emotions. Okay, it's a very, very fine line. And if you need support with this, please reach out to get support from a therapist. You know, we work a lot with this, like I said, at Mountain Vista. There are other therapists who also specialize in working with anxiety. And so please reach out and get some support. This is really just an overview of all of this. And I don't want you to, feel like you can't get help on developing some of these skills. So it's important that worries do not get to control or dominate the house. So help your kid understand. It is so helpful to support kids in understanding how anxiety works. When they can understand the principles I'm teaching you, then you can work as a team to conquer anxious thoughts and feelings. And even kids as young as preschool can get this if you use language they understand. So to help your kid understand, remember when your kid is really anxious, their brain is in fight or flight. So if they're really anxious, you cannot help them logically think about anything. They're too anxious. If they are below that 6 or above below, remember they can probably work through it easier. But if they're 7 or above, with the amount of anxiety they're feeling, it's just too much and they can't do it yet. So at Mountain Vista Psychology, we specialize in working with people who have anxiety. We use both time-tested and innovative approaches like cognitive behavioral therapy. Some of us are trained in EMDR. Some of us are trained in EFT tapping. And neurofeedback can also be really effective with treating anxiety. So if your child is somebody who struggles with anxiety, there are lots of different ways that they can get support to work through it. And you can as a parent too. And again, we do these things, we work with this a lot, but there are also other people who specialize in it. That's something you want to be sure is that who you work with gets anxiety. And we also have a therapists who specialize in working with a variety of age groups. So we work with adults, families, teens, kids, different people with different areas of specialization to support the whole family. So I'll do my little disclaimer. This is for educational purposes only. This webinar is. So, this is not meant to be any sort of counseling or psychological care. I just wanted to make this to help support you guys in understanding a few key concepts about anxiety. If this helped and you know that your kiddo is dealing with anxiety, please reach out for help. We offer a free 20-minute phone consultation to see if we're a good fit. I have the phone number 720-583-9332. Our care coordinator will answer the phone and help get you connected. Info at mountainvistaspsychology.com is the email, and then of course our website. But again, also there's others who also can support in this. So if these feel like skills that you need to develop, want to develop, you need help, your kid needs help, I guess my strong message is don't wait, because anxiety can definitely snowball. So it's good to get the help while you can, when anxiety has not ballooned into something bigger. If you're already in that something bigger space, it's never too late. The sooner the better, and there are things that can help. So if traditional talk therapy hasn't helped, like I said, there's other strategies and forms of therapy that can. So please don't give up. Okay, I hope you guys have a fabulous day. Bye-bye.